The great jazz musician Frank Sinatra, in the early days of his music career, created an album, My Way. That album has been sung across many centuries. Today it is used in England as one of the songs to bury off people. Even in America and across Africa, many people still sing it as inspiration. But the song My Way has so many lessons it can teach us about influence. Originally, My Way was composed by an Italian artist called Paul Anka, a little-known man that nobody ever knew. But how the song transcended from Paul Anka to becoming a song that Frank Sinatra, arguably one of the world's best jazz musicians, how he made it his album cover and eventually his album name, is what everything we need to know about influence. Influence is tapping into the potential of people that can help you reach your market. For brands, for companies and corporations, the need for influence will help them to access the vital markets that they need in the Ugandan audience. But stunningly, the Ugandan social media audience is this small, very tiny. We have not more than 2 million people who use Facebook. Neither do we have more than 2 million people who use Twitter. The bloggers might even be much less. And yet, within the numbers there is every market that you might need to be targeting in Uganda. It's every market that purchases the goods that we see. And if you are a brand that needs someone to buy your goods, you need to be looking towards influencer marketing. And I will tell you why. Nobody buys things anymore. People buy things because their friends are talking about them. We create hashtags like YOLO because our friends are talking about it. We can afford to talk about 500,000 shilling jobs because our friends are talking about it. If you are a brand, how do you tap into this conversation? How do you leverage these conversations to work for you? But also, how do you benefit the people that are leading these conversations? Which is where the debate on influencer marketing sits the highest. Throughout the year, we've seen telecom companies, notably Airtel and MTN, battle for influencers. That battle has been so painful that every day on the timeline, there are at least 10 unsolicited tweets from different people talking about MTN brands and MTN goods, talking about Airtel brands and Airtel goods. And yet the fight between our two telecom companies has not trickled down into benefit for the influencers. Why, you may ask? Brands that target influencers are not careful about the kind of influence that they need. If you need influence for people to make calls at night, what kind of influencer are you looking for? Are you looking for an upmarket journalist whose job is to deliver news on the timeline? Is that the influencer that can make people make calls at night? Maybe not. Maybe you're looking for the campus guy. The campus guy with a large following on campus, whom everybody knows on the campus that he has the new and sleazy stories. That's the influencer you need to be targeting. So that's the first lesson about influencer marketing. As it continues to rise in Uganda, we need to take some very critical lessons on what kind of influence do we want. What kind of influence should be attached to the brands that we market, and how do the brands benefit? But secondly, and even more painfully now, is the story of influence and money. When you meet influencers, they have large followings. Arguably, every description of influencers does not rule out the fact that they have large followings on social media. Sometimes these followings trickle down even into real life. But in most times, the influence that comes with social media starts from the real life. So every influencer has built their character, they've built their discipline, they've surrounded themselves with friends who matter and care, and grown around them a crowd of people. When you come to tap into this audience, many brands do not notice the value that an influencer adds to their company. An influencer is pitching you to his primary school children, he's pitching you to his friends in high school, He's pitching you to his friends in campus. He's pitching you to the people that follow him for the things that he does. And that needs to be rewarded. Brands need to start to appreciate that influencers need to be paid more to deliver more. Influencers who are even more creative with the work they do of influencing people to buy brand and their loyalties need to be paid even much wages. Let's take examples. In our media companies, when companies want to advertise in newspapers, they pull out huge sums of money to just get a center spread. And yet, when influencers pitch your product every passing day on their timelines, that amount is not given to them. We have influencers in Uganda whose numbers are 2 times more than the papers that we sell. What message do we send to these people? So on this social media day, I'd like to call ourselves to reflect on 2 things. 1, what kind of influence do we want for our brands? And 2, how are we paying for that influence? Is the influence benefiting? Are the influencers getting value for pitching your product? And is your product getting value from the influencer? I look forward to the conversations, but even much more, for the memory of Julie, I hope they are good conversations. Raymond in Nairobi.